The markets are shifting, and today we're going to be zooming out to take a broader look at the overall playing field. Over the last 2 weeks, Bitcoin's ETF inflows and outflows have told a powerful story, and we're going to be breaking down exactly what they may be signaling for the road ahead. We'll also dive into the altcoin landscape by analyzing the Others Dominance chart, which is an underrated but valuable tool that gives us a high-level read on the overall strength of the altcoin market. And with Ethereum's highly anticipated Pectra upgrade set to roll out this week, there could be a major move brewing beneath the surface on Ethereum. My name is Paul Sampson, and this is DataDash. Hey folks, welcome back to DataDash. My name is Paul Sampson, and today we're going to be looking once again, as I said in the beginning here, at a little bit more of a broader outlook on Bitcoin and the overall market. We can see that we've had some pretty interesting movement here on Bitcoin in the last few months here as we began the year 2025, where we had a significant rally topping off at about $110,000 and pretty much a slow grind towards about 74,000, which was essentially the back test of the previous high that we put in on the year before, give or take a little bit ahead of that, and have since seen a pretty decent rally back up into the $90,000 to $95,000 region. Now, aside from just sheer price action, let's take a look at a few contributors that may be aiding the price as well, where we've seen this recent rally back into the $90,000 range when we were just trading almost at 70,000, which was about $20,000 lower, especially when we were experiencing such uncertainty in the market around the tariffs that were basically being imposed at that time, which are still being discussed and negotiated and actively being thrown out basically by the day. So it's still something to be basically paying close attention to as we continue. I wanted to take a look at the fear and greed index for both crypto and the stock market, because while the S&P 500, which has seen a pretty decent decline over the last few weeks as well, granted similar to Bitcoin, has recovered a decent amount of that drop so far. As granted, we have not seen new highs quite yet, and we are at some pivotal areas where we could see continuation to the downside if we do not reclaim some of these said highs. But I thought it was interesting to note that while Bitcoin is trading at approximately $93,000 to $94,000, and the S&P 500 or the SPY, which is the ETF measured against the S&P, is trading at roughly about $566. S&P just basically 10x that, right? So 5660-ish. I wanted to note that the fear and greed index here for at least crypto is sitting at 52, relatively neutral, and which is an interesting take here because we are sitting at almost $94,000, and the market is relatively not really caring. And then for the stock market, we actually have fear setting in or continuing to take place here with a reading from Friday, basically, right at the time of recording, coming into Monday now. But on Friday's last measure here, the stock market was reading at 43 fear, right? So the overall take is that there is a recession either already here or on the way. Obviously driven by those tariffs as a main piece. And personally, what this tells me, at least as a investor in the space, as a trader, is that people are not really paying attention, if more than anything, right? Because both of these are pretty much back into neutral territory. There's not extreme euphoria. There's not necessarily extreme fear right this moment. And that generally leads to just when investors in general are just not paying attention, okay? And with the levels that we're at right now, it is, I'd be a little bit more bearish on the grand scheme here if we were leading more into a greed area. The fact that we're pretty neutral on both crypto and the stocks, and the fact that both Bitcoin and the S&P put in pretty decent lows at the moment where they've seen significant bounces and reclaims so far, to me, it truly indicates that we may see a continuation to the upside. Now, one thing that we do like to look at, especially on these Monday, more of a macro update here, are the ETF instruments essentially that are based around Bitcoin specifically, to kind of pay attention to see how the institutions and major players are hedging themselves on Bitcoin at the moment, to see if we can get a little indication of where the market may be heading from a sizable entity's point of view. So just a quick review on ETF inflows, outflows. This is basically what we're looking at as far as the ETFs that are available right now, and any inflows essentially are when institutions or investors are buying Bitcoin. Outflows are essentially when they're selling. On these charts here, when you see anything in these parentheses, very similar to any other type of financial reporting. That's generally when it is in the negative. So those are when the outflows are occurring in the parentheses. When it's not, that's just a positive function. And what is really interesting, if we take a look at this, is that once again, going back to Friday, you can see we had a pretty big inflow, meaning that institutions were picking up some big amounts of Bitcoin, even at the price that we were closing at, around that $97,000. Thursday before that, another 422 Bitcoin. So 1,000, just plus 1,000 in that 2-day span as we closed the week. A small day of selling the day before that, a little bit of buying before that, big day of buying on the 28th. And I really wanted to point out these two right here, which was essentially all the way back on the 22nd, when you see almost 1,000 Bitcoin being bought up each day here. And if we go back to the Bitcoin chart, and once again, this is on the 22nd of April, but 22nd of April, let's just see what the Bitcoin price was looking like. And that was right here, essentially right before we got this really big burst up to the upside. Is on the daily time frame, by the way. So in that 2-day span, we had a ton of Bitcoin getting bought up by the institutions, essentially, and a bit more up around this region that we're in now. And while we saw some pretty sizable purchases or inflows on Thursday and Friday of last week, nothing really compares to, or not nothing, but not necessarily as sizable as what we saw on the 22nd and 23rd of April before that. Essentially, that was a short squeeze, is something that we were noting just out of the simple price action at the time. Looking at it now, it's very interesting to note that and align that over with the ETF inflows at the time as well. But now when we're looking at the fear and greed, for example, and we're sitting in a pretty neutral area as far as the retail investor would go, I think it's important to note that the institutions are still picking up sizable amounts of Bitcoin, even at close to $100,000 price point, which to me indicates that we will see more of a price move to the upside, at least over the near term in the next coming weeks and months here. On a macro idea, I think that that's something that, is really contributing to the potential for us to break this region to the upside. We're going to cover that here in a second. If you're enjoying these insights so far and you'd like more real-time updates, actionable setups, and deep market breakdowns, I invite you to check out my private community. This is where I first shared the bearish setup on Bitcoin at $110,000 all-time high weeks in advance before we dropped down almost 30%. It's where I gave you the exact setup on Solana before it got the recent rally from the local low at $97, where I called virtuals before its explosive 400% move, and most recently where I highlighted the bullish reversal on Bitcoin from 77,000 well before the run back up to 96,000. Inside, you'll get everything from short-term outlooks to long-term macro trends, plus full access to my educational academy where I teach the tools, indicators, and strategies that I use each and every single day to attain an edge in this market. We also host weekly exclusive live streams, classroom style updates, and a private town hall for members. If you want to stay ahead of these moves before they happen, click the link down in the description below and come join us. All right, folks, taking a broader look here on Bitcoin and not necessarily looking at each and every small move here, seeking out what could potentially be the next massive move for Bitcoin, in my opinion, really all kind of hinges on a few things here, and just kind of driving it back to a simple EMA outlook. Here I've got on the daily time frame, and I actually clicked over to our 21, our 50, and our 200-day EMAs, which are moving averages. Rule of thumb is above these moving averages and price is expected to be more bullish. Below them, price is expected to be more bearish. And really simply put, currently we're above all three of those mentioned moving averages, which began basically back at around $83,000 right before we initiated what was anticipated to be that short squeeze. Also where all those ETF inflows really started to pile in at right about that $84,000 mark. Essentially, as long as we're trading above these three moving averages, and for me, an added bonus is to be trading above $80,000, which is unlike these, which are moving. This is that high time frame average that is not moving, but it's just a average of price that will remain in the same place. That is the average of all of last year. And just added on to this, it's just similar to the 200-day moving, except for it's 365 days non-moving, right? This is a whole year of price action average in one level that is crucial to be holding above for any more upside. And then below, obviously, similar thing, right? Below is bearish. So not only are we holding the yearly average here, we are well above our 200-day moving average, our 50-day, our 21-day, all other key areas here. We have our quarterly average that we've been discussing here. Once again, these pivots, this PVT is just that. It's just a high time frame average of price for a certain session. So in this sense, I'm referring to 12 months, so a yearly pivot. This is a Q, so for quarter, so that's a quarterly pivot, and that's for Q2 of this year, right? So that was a very likely area we would return to in Q2, and so we did. And while the price action is currently butting its head against a pretty crucial level here, which is essentially from our overall high to our low, we've got our gold pocket, which is exactly where we've come up to and essentially hit off of last week. And we're getting a little bit of a pullback here from now. So realistically, in theory, this is a crucial area. And this could very well be where we could see a sizable rejection, just basically based on a technical outlook, right? That is something that by all means, we all should be aware of at this point. I just have to, configure with a couple of other things here. And for me, it's the fact that we're above one major high time frame average, all moving averages at the moment, a quarterly high time frame average. Right now, specifically, we're above our yearly open, which was also an untapped quarterly level when we came up to it. A lot of support down below us at the moment, okay? On top of that, the fear and greed, going back to that, is sitting at neutral, and just interesting because Bitcoin is trading at almost $100,000. And it's a nothing burger, right, to most people. So to me, that just kind of yells a time when most are not paying attention. I know that most probably are not paying attention because the altcoins are not moving, and that's when most people, unfortunately, are interested in this market. So one thing to be highly aware of is that, yes, we've come into major resistance. There was a few reasons why this region itself was of note from the area that we traded up from. Originally, I was more so looking for a move back into this region, and then we would look for actually a move down, right? A simple A, B, C style correction. And folks, it's really important to hammer on the crucial levels that we're at right now, because if anyone out there, right, was considering de-risking when we were trading Bitcoin wise at $77,000-$74,000 just a few weeks ago, obviously the altcoins were in way worse places. Right now, we've seen a small burst up, 20% moves here, 30, 40, 50, 60% pushes back up. They're nowhere near probably where most people entered, as well as definitely not near all-time highs by any means. These are the days that if you couldn't handle Bitcoin going down to something substantial like 50, 60,000 once again, because that would just completely obliterate the altcoin market, at least short term. This is a really big area to be considering your overall strategy, potential de-risking area. And that, once again, that's if you were someone who was getting really nervous about around 77 and 74. I had people reaching out to me personally, people, my friends, my family, anybody, talking about trying to get out of everything at that point, that the bull run was over and all these things, which is probably something that has led to that fear and greed being a little bit more on the neutral side. I think everybody's a little bit really cautious here, which you should be. By all means, this is a very, very crucial region on the chart, very technical. This could be where we come up to and put it in a lower high. Okay, this is where something that's known as where you get that drop down here. You've obviously put in your first, these were our lows originally. We put in our first low, you come up and we put in a lower high, and that is essentially a downtrend, really getting a kickoff there. But to me, I'm going to go ahead and take this off, and more so, not because the price is higher at the moment. You'll come to find that I do tend to look for some really big moves in the market as much as anybody else obviously would like to. I'm also a really big contrarian when it comes down to a necessary time to be one, right? So at least for myself, when I look across the board, I see a lot of very negative outlooks. I see, once again, over caution, which by all means, this is a place to be cautious. So don't take what I'm saying in the sense of me being like, oh, this is just, that was a bear trap a few weeks back and we're just going to endlessly pump from here. Not what I'm saying by any means. But when I cover the altcoin, the others dominance, you'll kind of get a little feel from that. Ethereum as well. Even if Bitcoin maybe stalls out here, whatever the case is, and we do roll over, I think it's a few weeks away, if anything. But on a macro scale at the moment, what I see out of Bitcoin, just to be super clear, is that once again, we're holding high time frame average number 1, 3 of the moving averages number 2, 4 another more smaller time frame non-moving average sitting here at 89,000, 80K, 88 to $90,000, right? And then if I take our fixed range volume profile tool, which is the tool that I utilize to just get a range idea based on volume of a certain area. And I'm pulling this from the region that we broke up to from the last range and essentially just merging all the data that we've been putting in since about the 11th of November. I'm going to go ahead and kind of highlight the overall value area here. All right. And this is basically the range that I am looking at Bitcoin in at the moment. And if you'll notice, the bottom of the range comes in at that quarterly pivot, that high time frame average price, about 89,000. You'll also notice we've got the 50-day EMA sitting right here as well. All right, so this little region, not that it has to be exact, we can kind of wick around here, but this really has my attention. And then a third piece of confluence at this point is if we were to take a Fibonacci retracement from the low to the high. I'll turn on the 382. You'll notice that comes in around this $89,000 area as well. And I bring that up because this is a pretty sizable, strong move here. And a lot of times when we get a pullback, if we're going to see one, we don't get a deep one all the way down to our gold pocket, which is basically a 61.8 to a 65% retrace of, in this case, we'd be looking at this move up, and that would be a 61 to 65% retrace down here. A lot of times you get a shallow retrace on some of these more stronger moves, and you only come down to the 382. So this is still a pretty sizable retracement. It's 38% of this overall move, not 38% of the overall price, but 38% of this move specifically. And so in this case, we have our overall range low here. We have our 50 EMA sitting right there. This region is basically the back test of potentially our highs from this area here. And this is the real key that I'm going to be looking for to see if we come down to and hold that as support, because at that point, I'll be looking for us to rotate this range for one. But realistically, I would imagine that we actually break out of this region to the upside in the coming weeks. And then the overall targets of any new sizable moves up, once obviously a new high is made, would be our trend-based gold pocket sitting up here at about $115,000. At that point, we'll see how things react if we get it to it. And then ultimately 137 would be our one-to-one as far as a trend-based new all-time high target would be if we were to break this higher. Now, of course, things can change, folks, but while we're holding all these high time frame averages and the fact that the market is pretty much asleep at the moment, I just see a world where we break higher more than a world where we break lower at this point. So I think it would catch a lot off guard. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are as a DataDash community member. So please leave us a comment down below. I'd love to hear your feedback on the video that I'm providing here, the analysis as well, potentially anything you'd like to see covered in further videos, and just in general, just maybe have our conversation continue from here. Ethereum is another reason why I lean a little bit more bullish here in the crypto market, which obviously is more than likely going to transition into the stock market as well. But similar to Bitcoin just a few weeks back, right before we had that short squeeze that I'd mentioned, right, where we pushed up from $84,000 to $96,000, 84,000 to 96. Basically, Bitcoin had pushed up and reclaimed the 21 EMA and was basically, just kind of squeezing right between the 21 and the 50. And we have the same situation going on right now for Ethereum, on top of this overall bullish harmonic pattern that I've kind of highlighted the last few weeks here. This is a pretty high time frame ordeal. Took from August 2024 to April, so about 8 months for this to basically generate essentially. So it may take a few months for the targets to be met, in which in this case, target one is the 382 retrace, and then the 618 to 65 retrace, which once again, this whole move down, this would be a 38% retrace of that move. And then this would be a 61 to 65% retrace of that move, of the fall, right? So not a 38 or 40% move in general, but of the overall move from 4K down to 1,400. Geez. Those would be the two. And interesting enough, the 382 target here sits at $2,400. It's also our high time frame average price, so our quarterly pivot for the second quarter this year. So likely to be met this quarter. We've still got a few months here. And on top of that, we've got this red line coming in here, which is our 200-day moving average. So currently price is squeezing right in between the 21 and the 50-day EMA. That 200 sits right here. Once again, just stacked confluence up around that $2,400 area. And then if things really got squirrely, the B point of this pattern, and then the gold pocket, which in this case, they just happen to align, There's also a volume target in line there as well. Comes in at 3,100. And at this point, it seems like it wouldn't happen, or, it's hard to imagine, I guess, because we've just been so down for so long. But once again, everyone is really falling asleep at the wheel here. And in my experience, that's generally when we see some pretty big moves. In this case, we've already fell so much. There's also a bullish setup here. We are squeezing between EMAs. I anticipate Bitcoin to get a little bit of a sizable move up, even if we get a little 5% pull down first. On top of all that, we have the Pectra upgrade this week, I believe on the 7th of May. For Ethereum. So they're going to be introducing some new upgrades and scalability into the platform. I think it's going to help with gas fees and things of that nature. And while the price action is sitting in a place where I could easily see a decent move up, I think that something like that would be the news catalyst that would be paired with it. That would give it just a really nice reason as far as fundamentally would go to see a price increase here. And just to that main target of the harmonic pattern / the quarterly pivot / our 200-day EMA, it's about a 35% move on ETH if we get it from exactly where we are now. So just something that I'm monitoring here pretty hard. And we'll be looking at it over in the next few weeks and months as well. All right, the others dominance is something that I wanted to kind of bring up because I think it's a very interesting outlook here. Now, this is the dominance in market cap, excluding the top 10, right? So that's no Bitcoin, no Ethereum, top 10 as well, right? XRP and others. So really, this is just pretty much the majority of all other altcoins. And while currently we're trading relatively close to our recent low from June of 2023, I did want to point out just the overall outlook of this setup here, where we are putting in pretty substantial market structure, where you could see we put in our high, we've got our low, we've got a higher high, we've got our potential lower low over here in this region, maybe even a double bottom where we are currently, which could signify a decent little bounce back up to the upside. And even if we don't reach all-time highs, even in that next run, just taking a simple Fibonacci retracement at this region and getting a push back to our gold pocket would be about 15%, which currently we're sitting at 7% dominance. So that would be almost a 100% move. Once again, a little skeptical at the moment, or speculative, I would say. But nonetheless, we've seen moves very similar to this in the past, right? Where we've had these almost double bottoms after a pretty sizable move back down, and you get a huge run to the upside when everybody's not really paying too much attention. And of course, as the market loves to do, it loves to whip the other way when everyone is thinking one way, or in general, what I've also noticed, you get the euphoric stages where everyone thinks it's not going to fall and everybody rushes in and starts buying the green candles. And then we obviously get a pullback. The opposite of that is when the pullback has occurred, everybody's either pretty much out, or maybe they want to buy more, but they are scared. They're waiting for another low. They're waiting for whatever the case is. In this case, I think the sell in May and walk away narrative is something that is kind of going through the rumor mill, or people are just kind of waiting for next quarter, whatever the case may be. I think that there's a recipe where the market actually sees a sizable bounce here. Once again, I'm always open to the market changing and me adapting to that data. But if I'm coming in here from a overall view, my very clear outlook right now is that even though we may see a small pullback towards 88,000 ish, 90, right? $1,000 Bitcoin, which is a few percent away from where we are now. Nothing crazy. I think that overall Bitcoin is about to push up from here. I think that Ethereum is going to see a sizable move, and that is probably going to be one that really shakes up the market. And then I think that the altcoins do have a sizable opportunity here to get at least a continuation of some of these relief rallies that may last several months, right? So that is my overview right now as we see it. And that is going to do it for today's update. If you found any value in today's analysis, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of our upcoming content. Big shout out to everyone who's already part of the private community. And if you are not yet a member and want access to everything we covered today before the big moves happen, please be sure to check out the link down in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. And until then, everybody, cheers.